The False Sky, Angels Fallen from Celestia. The simulated world that is Teyvat and forbidden knowledge. Not only are we learning why people have died learning these ancient secrets, this false sky that the Fatui harbingers are fully aware and trying to overthrow Celestia with the remains of the third descender. But this is what it's always been about. Everything that we've done, all the secrets, all the speculations, it all comes down to this. The false sky and the big lie that is Teyvat. So let's go over this Archon quest because holy crap, we got a lot to go over. We also got a ton of details on the inner workings of the Fatui and the Harbingers and their own agreements with the Tsaritsa, because these are some of the biggest lore drops we ever got. Not just references in old ancient books or texts, or some cryptic dialogue or voice lines, no. We literally saw Mawika pretty much go Super Saiyan and launch a Kamehameha to thwart the Abyss's attempts to conquer Natlan. But she also hit the false sky. This same false sky that's been referenced multiple times in the game, but we never actually saw it till now. And let me tell you, oh boy. So let's break down the entire 5.1 Archon quest. Let's start from the beginning and recap what we just saw. I'm not going to spend too much time on the beginning of it because it's more or less pretty straightforward. I don't really think it requires explanation. When we left off in 5.0, Mawika told us the ancient hero of the Children of the Echoes, Shilonen, would forge us an ancient name. And that's where we start this quest off. But she tells us that we need the help of someone from the Nightwind tribe, Silali, who I gotta say is probably one of my favorite characters in this game. She is hilarious. But in order for her to help us gain an ancient name and help Shilonen, we need to help rescue Oraron, who is speculated to have been abducted and coerced by the Fatui and the captain. But he ends up finding us first and wants us to hear the captain out, what he has to say. The captain telling us that there is another way that the Pyro Archon is hiding from us and that the oath has gone unfulfilled. We're talking about the old Night Warden Wars 500 years ago. Now we know the captain was here in Natlan. We'll get into that in a second. But then Silali scolds the crap out of Oraron. And then as we're making our way back to the stadium, he disappears again. So she is absolutely livid, but we learn that he actually is helping the captain willingly. And we learned that's because he tailed the captain for a while. The captain originally was looking for Silali, but Oraron wanted to make sure that he had good intentions. And after watching the captain and tailing him, this is where he ultimately decided to step in during the fight and save the captain's life with his duel against the Pyro Archon. He realized that the captain also wants to save Natlan, and Oraron also doubted the Pyro Archon in the current system and planned to save Natlan from the Abyss. That is why he joined sides with the captain. The captain is aware that the Pyro Archon could use her Gnosis and basically solve the problem, save Natlan from the Abyss, but it would cost everyone's memories. It'd be like Ruka Devada for everyone in Natlan. They would forget memories and history of everything that's happened in Natlan. It would like clean slate the entire nation. Nothing anyone has ever done would matter. Everyone's memories, history itself. The captain believes saving humanity physically is worth the price though. Mawika doesn't see that. She sees that as stealing people's honor, their livelihoods, their legacies, and that there's gotta be another way. But the captain truly believes that she's run out of time. There's no time for that. And they gotta act now, so he's taken matters into his own hands and Oraron agrees with him. Silali is also feeling a little bit down on herself because not only did she fail to bring him back and is responsible for Oraron, but she has a hard time connecting with people. Everyone in her tribe is scared of her. Her abilities are renowned within the Nightwind tribe, so she proceeds to get absolutely wasted. She would fit right in Mondstadt or on the Crux crew with Captain Beto. But the reason she's feeling extra guilty is because Oraron's soul isn't complete. And originally when they found him as a baby, the tribe was going to sacrifice him because they figured doing this would help them mend and fix the ley lines. So Oraron feels this guilt, like he could have made a difference and been a big hero. And Silali feels guilty because she didn't agree with this and sacrificing this kid, but she didn't try to stop it either. So she's been carrying that around this whole time. Jaska and her sister do some detective work and they ultimately figure out that the captain is using this ancient mechanism called the Source Mechanism that can basically do the exact same thing that her Pyronosis could, so he's taken matters into his own hands. He's going to save Natlan in his own way. The ancient histories of Natlan will be gone. Anyways, Ororon, because his soul isn't intact completely, is infiltrated by another soul. He has to kind of fight within himself, and basically proving Malwika's point through his memories and his experiences. The histories of Natlan, its ancient warriors, proves that she's right. He was able to resist it and keep control, also becoming one of the ancient heroes representing the masters of the Night Wind. And during this little confrontation, the captain also saved Shalonen. Basically, the captain owed him a debt, but also sees him as a comrade, and the captain is honorable. We've known that long before we met this character, and now he officially agrees to help us. Fighting among ourselves is useless, and the reason he wanted the Gnosis, believe it or not, wasn't for the Tsaritsa and her plan, but because he thought he could use this same tactic to save Natlan. That is why he waltzed into Natlan and challenged an Archon point blank in single combat. He wanted to save Natlan the same way he knew Malwika could, and chose to use the source mechanism as a secondary option. Now he's officially on our side, and the Fatui have had orders to help Natlan, its people, and follow the orders of the Archon. For those of you wondering why the Fatui soldiers are much more loyal to the captain, we learned this long ago. Each Harbinger controls different Fatui platoons and has different armies and subordinates under them. But we've learned that all of those subordinates don't necessarily like working for individual Harbingers, but the ones that serve the captain have nothing but respect and loyalty towards him, and other Fatui soldiers like in Mondstadt, the ones serving under Signora, that they wish they were working with the captain. He is the #1 Harbinger and the most honorable, so the Fatui operatives prefer to work under him, which is why they don't question his orders, even if they're a little unorthodox. And this is the first of the major lore drops. We got the Lady of the Night Kingdom revealed and the captain's somewhat origin. Let's start with the captain because we're already discussing him, and then we'll move on to the Shaded Death and the Lady of the Night Kingdom. Essentially, the captain is from Conria 500 years ago, and he fought and he gave it everything he had. But with the 5 sinners and the Abyssal invasion, their homeworld was doomed. There was nothing he could do, and he carries that with him to this day. So he left Conria because it was a lost cause, took his platoon and went to Natlan, where he met and befriended the old ancient hero of the Nightwind tribe. That is why the captain is invested in Natlan. Even though he was from Conria, they didn't turn him away. He also gained immortality. He's a pure Conrian. And the reason he wears a mask is because his flesh is not intact. I'm starting to kind of wonder if he looks like Overlord under that mask. Like, is he just a skeleton that's immortal at this point? Like, what does he look like? He probably looks horrific, to be honest. Malwika even states that she would have recognized him if he fought alongside them in the Night Warden Wars, but he doesn't look like he used to. It's the mask and also his flesh. Over the years, his body did not remain the same and intact. Paimon rightfully asks, well, what about Dainsleif, and for that matter, Piero too? Why do they look normal? Why is it just the captain that's immortal? His flesh rots. The captain doesn't really answer that question. He kind of just states that he carries around more anger and hatred than his own, and that he's surprised that we know him. Dainsleif is probably a lot higher ranking within the royal family and Conria's hierarchy to begin with. But now we know why the captain is the first Fatui Harbinger. Piero probably would have knew him personally and assigned him as the first Harbinger, and the first recruited to that cause. Malwika even states that he's the pinnacle of human strength, and the captain tells us that he's nowhere near his prime. So even though he went toe-to-toe with an Archon and traded blows, he's in his current weakest state. I can't even imagine how much of a juggernaut this guy was back in his heyday. Malwika even says this as well. What are they putting in the water in Conria? The captain, Piero, Dainsleif, the 5 sinners? Like, this nation produces such powerful individuals, and Arlecchino as well. She's associated with Fontaine but is from Conria. The captain is associated with Natlan, but he's from Conria. They got some absolute juggernaut characters. The captain also states the reason he's allowed to pursue his own agenda by saving Natlan and put the Tsaritsa's goals behind his is because the Tsaritsa gives her Fatui Harbingers free range to also pursue their own goals while simultaneously still trying to accomplish her will. Towards the end of the quest, they already hinted that the captain's probably going to turn heel once Natlan's completely saved. He's obviously still going to collect the Gnosis for the Tsaritsa, but saving Natlan is far more important to him, and all of the Fatui Harbingers are allowed to pursue their own agendas at the same time, which is why we've had both run-ins and made allies with different Harbingers along the way. They all go about things through their own means. Some are much less honorable than the captain. The captain also doesn't want to see what happened to his homeland happen to Natlan as well, so he's invested in saving it. And him along with his platoon of Fatui soldiers aiding Natlan is crucial at this moment. Now let's go back to the Lord of Night. By the captain using his mechanisms, he actually woken up the Lord of Night, who presides over the Wyab in the Night Kingdom. Now we already kind of learned this, but further confirmed, Xbalanque, the first Pyro Archon, made a deal with the heavens, a power, which we now know was the Shade of Death. I've been saying this for a long time, so I was gonna feel real dumb if it wasn't the Shade of Death this whole time. She tells us that the power of the heavens don't like to be mentioned by name or living beings, even the 7 Archons. They prefer to remain in the shadows as shades. The one that made a deal with Xbalanque was the ruler of death, Rovania. And under the Shade of Death's guidance, the Lord of Night created the Night Kingdom. The Lord of Night is a Seelie or angel. All Seelies were banished from Celestia and are actually angels. Oh, don't worry, we have a video in the works about her. People have been speculating that she's from the Seelie race or from Celestia, but that also means the goddess of flowers that aided King Deshard at one point would have been an angel as well. And the Lord of Night was obviously an underling of the Shade of Death. It's also stated that the Shade of Death overstepped her authorities as a shade, which would upset the heavenly principles, which I literally just made a video about talking about Zhongli and how all the shades in every region are undermining Celestia. It's just super surreal to me that these guys would have been referred to as angels back before the war in the heavens and the second who came to battle in Celestia. Before all the Seelies were weakened and banished, before the Celestial Nails. Silali and Shilonen then go to see the Lord of Night, where they learn that Malwika must die to appease the Shade of Death. That is the price you ultimately have to pay, and part of the system, the first agreement between Xbalanque and the Shade of Death. Malwika must die, and because Shilonen is forging an ancient name for the Traveler, she too must die. I mean, let's be honest, they're both going to be playable, so they'll probably get revived after this is all over, but still pretty intense. Silali has also seen the Pyro Archon's death, so she knows she's going to die. You're not supposed to peek into the future of the Pyro Archon, it's taboo, even though she has that abilities, but she did anyway. And that death is a rule. Fate indicates what will happen in the future, but death is a rule. The ruler of death's power will allow Malwika to triumph over the abyss, but she must offer her own life. That's the rule in the original agreement. That cannot change. Obviously, it probably will. They're not going to kill off a playable character. I doubt it. And now, our official journey will be recorded within Natlan. We have an ancient name, and we are part of Natlan now. This is where the war breaks out. And this was the funnest part of the Archon quest for me when the war breaks out, because this was intense. Like, I know a lot of people were worried about the war in Natlan and if they would dilute it, the tone of it, and they did not. Like, I know it's an animated game, but the stakes were high here, and we could see dead bodies everywhere. Like, people were dropping like flies, dying. Even Paimon, when she tells us she doesn't know she can take it, like, we would go to different spots where Abyss was spawning, and everyone would be dead already. We'd be too late. By far the best Archon quest we've ever had, in my opinion. Also, fun fact in case you didn't know this, because everyone can select where they go first to combat the Abyss, depending on what you choose first, the next areas you go, you would either save or the people would be dead already, depending on the order you choose. So it'll be different for everyone individually. And as the war rampages, the Abyss are gaining the advantage. You can see on the map, they're slowly consuming. The people there are dead, no signs of life. And this is where we find Chaska. Where her sister's fatally wounded, we are able to stop the abyssal corruption, but she's still going to die. But at least they're able to have their final words. And this is where Chaska becomes the last hero of Natlan, the next hero of the Flower Feather clan. And this is where Malwika gets a huge power boost from all 6 tribe heroes. And we divide and conquer to save Natlan and all its tribes, and Malwika giving us support from the sky. And as we make our final stand at the stadium, through that massive abyssal hole, and Malwika launches a fully powered Kamehameha at that abyssal energy in the sky, using the power of the 6 ancient heroes and the Shade of Death and the Divine Throne. She's able to overcome the Abyss officially, but her attack is so strong that it continues to hit the false sky. And it's so funny, I've been getting comments on one of my videos I made a year ago talking about the false sky and that Teyvat is a simulation. They are living in a simulated universe and Irminsul's like the database. It's like a supercomputer. And that forbidden knowledge corruption is like a virus. Now what we see here is a rift where the false sky is damaged and you can see the real sky, what's really lying in the skies of Teyvat. The look of an apocalyptic looking sky, a black and red sky with a shattered moon. And I know some people have pointed out that it looks like some cube energy beyond the sky, but actually the cube energy is what's concealing this hidden truth with a false sky. That is what's really out there. And obviously the sustainer of heavenly principles is using her same powers that we've seen her use to conceal that. This, what you're looking at, is why King Deshret and Orobashi died. Why forbidden knowledge is forbidden. Why the Fatui harbingers are harvesting the remains of the third descender and want to overthrow and seize authority from the gods. This is what it's always been about. And learning this truth is mind-boggling. But what exactly are we looking at besides a shattered moon? You know, moons are very significant in Teyvat. Part of the false sky is the full moon that you can see every night, and it never changes. There's also a lot of moon references with the Crimson Moon, the Raiden Shogun in the plane of Euthymia, the Walk-in Moon, literally primo gems that are shards, the resin moon pieces, and of course the Moon Sisters. Well, what are the Moon Sisters? We don't know much about them. There were 3 Moon Sisters, Arya, Sonnet, and Canon, that apparently lived in the lunar palace within Celestia. What I think we're looking at here is the real Celestia, the real sky and the real heavens, now being concealed from us. The Moon Sisters are ancient goddesses that are said to have lived alongside the Seelies now that we know that they're angels before the war in the heavens took place, and following the great calamity, the great war in the heavens. 2 of the sisters died, and it's said that their corpses continue to illuminate the night sky. Full moon that never changes is another one of the Sustainer of Heavenly Principles simulations. Similar to the false sky, the real moon is right here. It's no coincidence that this little snapshot of the world outside the false sky is a shattered moon, probably a corpse of one of the Moon's sisters, and that it was replaced with a nice fake full moon, still illuminating the sky, but it's all a lie. And one of the things Ildadori told Nahida that even she didn't know was the false sky is one of the truths hidden by Irminsul, the database of Teyvat, and the simulated world they're living in.
The stars, the sky, it's all a gigantic hoax, a lie.
May I ask you, have you in all your mighty knowledge ever heard the rumor that the skies of Teyvat are fake?
Huh?
That's the secret hidden by Irminsul concerning the truth of this world.
If this truth is hidden by Irminsul, and we know that burning of Irminsul is a foreshadowed event, now we know exactly why. I mean, we always knew exactly why, but now we can physically see why the Fatui want to burn that damn tree to the ground. This is what's being concealed from everyone, and they will seize authority from the gods. They just need a third descender remains to do it. What they plan to do with these remains, resurrecting the third descender, harnessing its power, placing it within a new vessel, well, that we don't know. But it's clear that that's what they intend to do. Now, it's pretty obvious why the Moon Sisters and all the Seelies died or were banished to Teyvat, why the Celestial Nails were cast. The war in the heavens between the Primordial One and the second who came, the second throne of the heavens. This conflict was said to have shattered reality, and was the most apocalyptic event that ever happened in Teyvat and Genshin's entire history that we know of. What we're looking at looks exactly like the remnants of that. An absolutely apocalyptic, devastated Celestia. Remember that very cryptic early trailer of Lumine running through what it looks like Celestia, or it might be the Abyss? This moon is always reoccurring. This is the endgame. This is what always has been Genshin Impact's endgame, and we're looking at it for the first time. Absolutely madness. After when we talked to Malwika, she even tells us that she's worried that she's going to feel the wrath of the Heavenly Principles for this. She's going to cover it up with the people in Natlan, but there's no denying what we saw. It seems even the Archons, some of them are aware of this reality, but they've never actually fully experienced it. Like Nahida didn't even know about it, but she's the youngest Archon. We're able to reassure her by telling her that we literally defied a prophecy with Focalor and Fontaine, so it's no big deal. The Traveler was also told by our sibling that the Heavenly Principles is going to wake up soon, but not right this second, so we got a bit of time still, before they retaliate. Now I want to elaborate and go into much greater detail on the False Sky, the Moon Sisters, and how this is all connected. I want to do a deep dive into all of that in its own video, but the second throne of the heavens came to Teyvat, and war was rekindled. The day when the primordial one and the second who came fought, the heavens collapsed, and the earth was rent asunder. Our ancestors and their ancestral land fell into a place during that conflict. This was stated by Istaroth before Sun and Moon. Before Sun and Moon. That title of that book really does have much deeper meaning now, doesn't it? That same video I'm getting comments on now, stating that Teyvat is like a giant prison simulated universe, it doesn't really seem all that crazy now, does it? Finally, we get Mawika going down memory lane again, where we actually get the official name of the ruler or shade of death, Ronova. Again, this makes me feel so much relief. I've been kind of hung on this theory for quite some time now, and a little part of me was like, if this isn't true, I've stated it in like 20 videos, I'm gonna feel real dumb. So I'm really just relieved that it's the shade of death. I really didn't see any other way, but you never know. And we get a recap of the first original deal between Xbalanque and Ronova. Again, sort of going along the lines of how the shades in each region have been undermining Celestia through the Archons and the Archon War. The new world of Celestia, the False Sky, and the New World Order was established right before the Archon War. And under the new regime of Celestia, there were 7 divine thrones to be had along with the remains of the third descender, which is Enosis. But it seems the shades that are angels under that false broken sky that we saw have been undermining Celestia this entire time. Whether it be Istaroth and Mondstadt and Inazuma, Leeway with Rex Lapis who's a mysterious descender, Shade of Void maybe, the Shade of Life quite literally creating the first Hydro Archon Ageria, and now with Natlan and its Shade of Death. There is also some subtlety with them stating that the captain was sent by Ronova on his long journey. They state that what Ronova did was an expression of love that got her in trouble with the Heavenly Principles. But what's interesting is, we talked about how all the 4 shades have influenced all the Archons in different nations. But the Cryo Archon is said to be the god of love. And it's even stated that Ronova succumbed to her self-pity. And now we know that Tsaritsa is a god of love with no love left for her people. And because like my last video I talked about this concept, the 4 shades of the primordial one, cultivating the Archons and Teyvat to undermine the current heavenly principles. Do you think the Shade of Death also played a part with Shaznaya? Seeing as that we know that shades can play parts in 2 different nations. Look at Venti and Mondstadt with Istaroth, and then Inazuma with Istaroth as well. Just something to note. And now, with the last bit of the Archon quest, Mawika intends to take the fight to the Abyss on their home turf and bring us with her because we obviously have significant power and our abyssal purifying ability. And we know Mawika is going to die. It's inevitable. I mean, let's be honest, she'll probably be resurrected or something, but I really do believe the Traveler has a good chance to become the next Pyro Archon. I'm not going to break that all down right now. I already made a video about that. All of that still stands and is honestly quite reinforced with this Archon quest. We need a significant power boost before Shaznaya. We don't need to solve a crisis there. The Fatui Harbingers are the crisis for the most part. They're not going to be struggling there like most nations that we have to save. It is Shaznaya with its Harbingers. They don't need our help. So we're going to need a big bargaining chip when we go there. Otherwise it's going to be underwhelming and we're going to get clowned on. This is the best way I see that playing out. Now, we don't have to become the Pyro Archon by name and title, but just the power boost that comes with it is what we need to go to Shaznaya. And ultimately, it's been foreshadowed in a Q&A and in the game itself multiple times through animated trailers and the Fatui Harbinger trailer at La Signora's funeral. Irminsul burning is inevitable. Clearly what the Dore said is true. The real Teyvat and the real Celestia, the real sky is hidden by Irminsul. And the Fatui are trying to blow that up. They're trying to blow this whole thing out of the water. So Irminsul definitely has to go, which means Nahida's probably going to die. And with the captain being sent on his journey by the Shade of Death, obviously at least one shade is aware of the Fatui's ultimate goal. And that's always what this has been about. The hidden truth, all of the lies, forbidden knowledge, regaining control from Celestia and the gods. Say what you will about Conry and the Cataclysm. I'm not saying what they did was right, but they obviously wanted to blow this whole thing up as well, and they almost succeeded. But ultimately they failed. Everyone else that survived was cursed, and the status quo was maintained. But it left scars throughout the lands and bitterness within everyone. And this leaves us with a whole bag of other questions, like why are Descenders even coming to Teyvat? Why did the Primordial One come? Why did the second who came? Why did they show up in Teyvat? Was it to escape the Abyss and the worlds outside? Was it to escape the Honkai? Create an isolated world that is safe from the Honkai? There's a lot of questions here, and again, I want to go over all of them in its own video, talk about the false sky, talk about other Seelies and angels we've seen within Teyvat. Oh, I might have actually been wrong about Paimon this whole time. Yeah, I might have been. In my false sky video, I do want to break down the Moon Sisters as well. There are a lot of questions I want to explore further, but I'm going to wrap the video up there because that's pretty much summarizing and recapping the entire quest. I just think it's still mind-blowing that the Sustainer of Heavenly Principles, her powers can be seen here clear as day, covering up the real sky, what's really beyond the stars. And it just makes the Divine Nails, the Seelies and Angels being banished from Celestia, why we weren't allowed to leave in the first place. It just sheds a lot more light onto all those questions we've had for years. And when Lumine is running through the corridors that looks like a breaking Celestia, I wonder if this is the route the travelers had to take in order to even get to Teyvat. And when they saw that broken sky, war-struck in Celestia, they were prevented from leaving, preventing from spreading that knowledge, and now are confined to Teyvat like everyone else, unable to leave, along with all the other angels and gods that lived in Celestia that were usurped and now banished to the lands. And that's not even discussing the Dragon King, Nibelung, who left after his loss against the Primordial One and came back, introducing abyssal corruption, bitter about being usurped. He might be the reason the Abyss even found Teyvat in the first place. I look forward to going over and dissecting each little bit of it, but thank you so much for watching. Please let me know your thoughts on this Archon quest. Did you enjoy it? What are your favorite parts? Let me know all of your thoughts. I look forward to reading them. I do hope you enjoyed the video. Hope this was a clear, concise, and easy recap to follow on the events of 5.1. Like and subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this, and as always, we will see you all in the next one. Later.